Ooh, that looks tasty.
Welcome, folks. Today the Hungry Gamer is back with another mini preview, and today we're talking about the Sixth Realm from Final Frontier Games. And I have to apologize to, well, both you and Final Frontier Games for this being a mini preview, and that is simply because very early on in my recording of the rules overview, the memory card filled up, and I just didn't notice. And this game is about to launch, and I just don't have time to go back and redo it. So Carl from Purple Moose Plays has been kind enough to let me kind of pull some of his footage and put that right up there. And you can go check out his solo play video on his channel. There'll be a link down in the description. And Purple Moose does really clean, clear, easy to understand solo play. So it's a solo play, but you still get the idea of what's going on. But what this game is this is a Euro game, and I hesitate to even call it a worker placement game. I mean, it's kind of, sort of, and like, if you really stretch it, a worker placement game, but it's kind of an action select. I don't know what you call it. It's a game, it's a Euro, it's doing a lot of stuff. Ostensibly, there are all these different guilds that are kind of helping explore this sixth realm that has been found in the world that most of the Final Frontier games are in, which are the 5 realms. Well, apparently there was 6. And each round there is going to be a different guild which is kind of in charge. And that's determined by this kind of rotating candelabra. And this one that the center of the candelabra is pointing to, that's the main guild, and you can take actions for free in that guild. Or you can take the side parts of the candelabra, and if you expend a resource that you have of that same color, you'll be able to take actions there. But for the most part, you're usually going to be taking actions in kind of the center one. And you're going to get a set number of action points kind of based on the engine that you've kind of built. If you've gotten bonuses, you might get more action points. You can expend resources to kind of get more action points. But at its core, you're going to get a set number of action points each round, and they're going to use those in the guild that you've chosen. And it might be the Adventuring Guild, where you're going to be kind of delving in a dungeon. It might be the Builders Guild, where you're kind of laying down foundations and then building houses out there on these foundations and covering up different symbols as you go and getting whatever that bonus is. It might be the Exploring Guild, where you're going to be kind of expanding out across this map and kind of building bridges and doing all these things. Again, getting bonuses as you cover things. That's kind of the theme as you go through it. Anytime you cover something up, you're going to get that bonus. Or it might be the Merchant Guild, which is kind of this little kind of rondelle thing that it's got kind of going around the board, and you'll be kind of picking what kind of bonuses you're going to be getting there. But at its core, you're going to be kind of balancing what you're going to do where. Because depending on where you go, depending on what you place, that's going to unlock different bonuses, that's going to unlock different in-game scoring conditions, that's going to give you points right away. Now, there is a lot going on in this game. There are a bunch of different guilds, and each one of those different guilds is almost its own mini-game. And so if you've activated that guild, it's going to operate completely differently than any of the other guilds, with the exception being you're going to have a set amount of action points that you get, but each guild is going to use them differently. For example, the Historians Guild, some points will let you kind of move the historians around, which is going to unlock different of the traditions that you can then kind of take onto your player board. Or some more points will let you kind of take one of those traditions and put that onto your player board. At the same time, while the core of the game are these main guild actions, you're also going to have a whole bunch of free actions that you can do. The most important of these is probably this kind of inking or scribing scrolls, which is going to adjust your own player board, give you different bonuses, different scoring conditions, and all of that. But the important thing that I need to point out is the free actions are either taken at the beginning of your turn or the end of your turn. Do it as many times as you want, at the beginning or at the end, but in the middle, you can't stop and do that. And you're going to play around and around until the end of the game, whoever has most points is going to win. And I will point out that it is a relatively low-scoring game. Now, with all that said, what do I like about this game? The first thing I'll say is, this is definitely the heaviest of the Final Frontier games. Though I say that with the understanding that when I say it's a heavy game, it's only heavy because there's a bunch of different guilds that you can activate. Each one of them is its own almost little mini game. You have to kind of learn all those mini games to be able to kind of bring it all together. But I appreciate that there's a lot of things going on, but each of those things that are going on are actually really easy to understand. Very easy to understand what they do, and also at the same time, if you've played Euro games before, easy to understand how they're going to interact with the other guilds around the board, so you can kind of very quickly, for a game of this weight, figure out how you want to proceed. And I really like that. I also really like actually pretty much all of the little mini games that you can play. I like how all the different guilds work. I particularly like the adventure kind of dungeon delving one that you can do. It's very simple. You're just literally moving through the dungeon, making choices. Do I want to go left? Do I want to go right? What am I going to get? How far can I go to start with kind of an advance on the next round? Because you're kind of going to reset every round. I like that one a lot. I like the Builders Guild a lot, as you're kind of putting out these polyominoes onto the main board, but then getting your own houses out there, getting more bonuses, because that's a little bit of a shared board that you're working with, and I like the way that one works. And I also really like the Merchants Guild, just the rondel. You kind of pick where you're going to go to start, and you're going to kind of move around this rondel, and I love a rondel, so I really like that one too. But that's not to say I don't like the others. Also, I'm just highlighting my favorite half of them, I guess. The next thing I really like the way the candelabra is kind of moving around, and you're getting different guilds activated for free each round, but you have that option to activate one of the other two. And it's expensive to have to use one of those resources. I really like it because that becomes a really key choice because you're going to have less action points usually if you're activating one of the side guilds. But maybe that's worth it. Maybe you need to do that now to get the one really big play. And it makes what should be a simple, okay, now we're doing this guild, it makes it a really challenging choice every single time, and I love that. As I mentioned, I really like the way the resources work. You're going to be using them to either activate a different guild, or you're going to be using it to kind of get more action points. I think that works well. I love the way the action point system works. It's pretty easy to figure out what it is you can do with that. You're able to kind of plan out, well, I'm going to kind of make this guild a little bit better. I'm going to get more bonuses in this guild, so I'm going to be more interested in activating that, and that means I'm also going to make sure I get more of these resources that I can use to activate this particular guild. I just think it's very, very clever the way that works, and I really, really enjoy it. I also really like the way the free actions work. And it sounds silly to be like, ooh, free actions, I like the free actions, but the fact that there's limited times when you can do them really is a fun little brain burn, because you have this moment of, okay, I can use my ink here. And if I do that, then that means I need to use this resource to make sure I activate this other guild here, because that's going to allow me to get this other action later on, which is going to give me more ink, which means at the end of the round, I will then be able to use my ink to do this other thing, or whatever. But the limitation of when you can do the free actions, I think, is just really inspired. You're listening to this, if you're still listening, like, what are you talking about? It's a free action, but I'm telling you, it works so well. It's so clever, and it's living rent-free in my head. Really, really like that. And the last thing I'm going to say is, I think all of the different elements, which are all fairly disparate in how they work, really do come together. It really does, and this game forces you to diversify. You cannot focus on one thing, and for me, I like that, because I will often find in games, if I can kind of build an engine, just kind of juice that engine, after like a second turn, I'm like, oh, I'm on autopilot. But you can't do that here. You have to be able to do some of everything, which means you have to make sure you're spending your resources wisely, and you're constantly having to think, and I really think that works well. So what are my quibbles with the game? Well, the first one is what I literally just said. It's kind of point salad-y, and if you've watched my channel a lot, you know I don't mind point salad. I enjoy point salad, but some people don't like that. And you're going to be getting points from a lot of different places. You have to diversify. You have to focus on all the guilds. You have to do a little bit of everything. And for some people, they don't like that, because they feel like if I'm doing everything, I'm doing nothing. And so if that's you, this might not be the game for you. The next thing is, this game takes up a lot of space. The player boards are big, the board is big, there's lots of, it takes up a lot of space. I have my 3x4 game topper that I play my games on, and I can comfortably do a 2-player game there. Maybe if I put some like kind of the sideboards out that kind of hook onto the side of the table so you can put kind of an individual player board there, I could play it with 3 players. Definitely couldn't play it with 4. So it takes up a fair amount of space. And so if you're going to be playing with 3-4 players, you're going to need a bigger table. It's just something to understand. And the last thing I'll say is the game takes a while to teach. And while none of the elements are hard, because there's all the different guilds that do all the different things, it takes a while to teach. And because of that, the game feels heavier than I think it actually is. And it might feel a little overwhelming at first, especially if you haven't played a ton of Euro games before. But really, that's it, folks. I'm really pleased with this game. I think it just hits so many of the notes of the type of things that I like in a Euro game. You have choices, and all of these choices, they're interesting. They're interesting to do all of these things. Even the ones that aren't my top little mini games, they're still interesting to do. And the way you can kind of combo things and make things work with each other is just very clever. So I'm pretty high on this game, and obviously, I've really enjoyed it, and I think it's doing some interesting stuff with elements of gaming that if you're a Euro gamer, you're already familiar with, but it's putting them together in an interesting way. So there you have it, folks. As always, if you found this video useful, please like, subscribe, share, maybe become a channel member. As always, thank you so much for watching. Have a wonderful day.